Greetings from Costa Rica and welcome to my Friday broadcast. It's November 14th, 2025, and today I want to talk about 5 upside trends that could possibly trigger a boom in Costa Rica real estate in 2026. If you were tuned in last week, November 7th, my broadcast, I had done 5 trends that could affect the market in 2026 that really turned out to be somewhat all headwinds, especially for sellers of real estate here. Today, we're going to go over those 5 trends that I discussed last week. We're going to discuss favorite real estate listing, as always, that has been reduced in price. And we're going to go over 5 trends that I actually think could cause a huge upswing in the Costa Rica real estate market in the year going forward. Thank you very much for joining me today. My name is Matt Rosenstiel. I am a Guanacaste real estate broker. I'm down here in Playa Junquillal in Guanacaste, but I help buyers and sellers of real estate in the areas that extend from Playa Potrero up in the north all the way down through Junquillal and even towards Marbella, including the areas in between of Flamingo, Grande, Tamarindo and Langosta, Avellanas, Negra, and Junquillal. So if you are interested in properties in those areas, don't hesitate to reach out to me by emailing me at matt@costaricamat.com. As a reminder, you can go to costaricamat.com and download my V-book, which is a 20-plus chapter compendium of some of my best informational real estate videos. I'm closing in on 500 total videos on my YouTube channel. Soon we will be doing a mega 500 video celebration with some blasts from the past, with some celebration, and hopefully with a review of these 7 years that I think I've been on YouTube or thereabouts. Without getting further into it, let me first discuss the 5 trends that I had gone over last week. And really, one viewer's response to that video was indicative, and I sort of saw them write this, and I thought, man, that's not exactly what I intended to show. This viewer wrote, this is an anti-investment video for people considering Costa Rica. Even a decline in prices wouldn't be enough to convince many to invest based on your information here. Well, I very much appreciate that comment, though afterward I was really thinking, my outlook isn't that negative for 2026. Another commenter also pointed out that I didn't give any real answers as to what will happen in 2026. And I want to credit that person with stating the obvious in that, no, I do not know what will happen in the Costa Rica real estate market next year. And instead, here on my channel, I'm always just trying to provide information and give my best analysis of the market here in order to guide people in making their own decisions for themselves. That all being said, I do think there are at least 5 reasons that 26 could be a big boom for Costa Rica real estate, and wanted to go over those today. And some of them are directly a contrast to what I discussed last week, or they're sort of complementary. So if you were tuned in last week, you would have seen me discussing the fact that, first of all, there are more gated community options on the market. And in fact, there is more inventory in general because developers rushed in to respond to a surge in demand that they saw post-COVID. Second of all, I discussed the fact that lots of people will be selling their real estate that they purchased during that boom in 21 through 23 because of the typical churn that you see foreigners undergoing, where a lot of people who purchase real estate in Costa Rica are ending up divesting from those properties only 2 or 3 years later. Third, I had mentioned that Airbnb rentals will be more difficult, and That's because of some new regulatory requirements the government will have. And fourth, I mentioned that next year being a midterm election, that can drive a lot of people to wait on the sidelines and sort of see how things pan out with the election. And finally, I mentioned that above and beyond all else, the US economy and its health are a huge driver of what is happening down here in Guanacaste, Costa Rica. Obviously, in 2009 and 10, our real estate market went from a huge boom driven by airports providing more flights, international interest in the country, and all kinds of development of communities. And then '09 and 10 absolutely obliterated the market given the international global financial crisis. Well, let's go over some of the things that I see going forward through next year that could really mean a boom for the real estate market. And I should mention, as always, qualify this discussion by saying I'm discussing really the market in terms of foreigners purchasing property here in Costa Rica. The local real estate market obviously is just intimately tied to the local economy. And there are some pretty predictable things that happen when the local economy changes, etc. This is referring to foreign direct investment in homes, condos, land, etc. So first of all, I want to cover the fact that that greater inventory that I mentioned, more gated communities, more churn, people selling their property because they bought in 21 to 23, all of that is actually going to make it more possible for a wider range of prospective investors to purchase here in Costa Rica. For a long time in Guanacaste, as an example, it was impossible to find lots inside a gated community under $200,000 or really at price points that were accessible to a greater range of foreign buyers. All of that inventory is going to, yes, apply some downward pressure on pricing. And more than anything, it's going to open up different opportunities that weren't previously there. One great example, the Baulas Sunset community between Villarreal and Huacas. That community, plus several other projects that have started, Alma Verde. The other one is the name of the other one is escaping me at the moment. They're offering lots, quarter acre, different sizes, even smaller in one case, that have price points at 100,000, 125,000, 150,000. Prior to that community existing, over the last few years, I would have told a lot of foreigners that if you wanted to specifically be in a gated community and if you wanted to live close to that corridor where you see private schools, hospitals, easy access to the airport, etc., your options would have been limited to very expensive lots at an order of magnitude higher in price. And so you've really seen some developers offering those lower priced options now that's going to really sort of broaden the possibilities for the different types of buyers who are moving to Costa Rica. Second of all, let's go over the fact that baby boomers, they were turning 65 at a pace of 10,000 US citizens per day. In 24 through 2027, that number is going to peak above 11,000 baby boomers turning 65 every day of the year, and it's going to continue for several years. Those baby boomers, those retirees from the US, are a huge proportion of our foreigner-based real estate market, and there are several reasons that those retirees are going to be even more interested in moving to Costa Rica or moving abroad in general. Obviously, the cost of living in the US and Canada is going up. You're seeing inflation there just as much as anywhere else. You're also seeing huge concerns with the cost and quality of healthcare, which really drives a lot of retirees to make that push to that actually pushes them over the edge to move towards a different country and decide to live abroad, since they're really the ones who are calculating every day, how can I afford to live on my fixed income here rather than just staying in the US? A lot of people are having to adjust their retirement calculations now that inflation has raised the cost of living so much. And a lot of them are definitely going to be looking for countries where healthcare can be provided more cheaply than in the US or Canada. So I wanted to bring up one side note here that really, when I'm talking about the Costa Rica real estate market for foreigners, this is not an absolutely gigantic market involving hundreds of thousands or even tens of thousands of buyers and sellers every year. In total, there are about 31,000 US citizens with some form of legal residency here in Costa Rica at the moment. Now, obviously, there are a lot of US citizens as well who are permanent tourists coming and going every single year and not actually obtaining that residency status. However, to give you a context for this discussion, our company, Coldwell Banker, is the largest network of real estate franchises in Costa Rica, with over 140 agents spread between 13 franchises and a master franchise as well. And pardon me if I'm misquoting that. It might be 14. I forget the exact number. But a good year for our company as one of the biggest volume real estate brokerages in the country is about 750 to 850 total transactions between lots, homes, condos, farms, etc. So 1,000 more buyers into Costa Rica in any single year would represent an enormous influx, or rather a substantial increase in the total number. It would be hard to extrapolate exactly how many people from foreign countries are buying real estate in Costa Rica every year, but you can get the idea that it would only take a very small number taking that leap rather than sitting on the sidelines in order to make it a boom year for our real estate market. Third, and this could be the single most important trend or impactful future possibility. People buy property, and really they buy anything based on emotional reasons, and afterwards they justify their purchase rationally. People also move abroad very often for emotional reasons. And where we noted, COVID-19 led to this absolute surge in investment. You saw one of the biggest booms in Costa Rica real estate in 21, 2, and 3 following the pandemic shutdown. Well, in 2026, obviously, emotions in the United States in particular are going through the roof as people are stressed about political factors, economic factors, what have you. There is an enormous amount of emotion in the system. And every day I talk more and more to clients who are focused on their fears about the future. Generally speaking, their fears about the future. And I'm seeing once again that people are responding to the stress in their lives. In 2026, I don't see that emotional level decreasing whatsoever. And we'll have a lot more people who visit and decide to buy rather than sitting on the sidelines, because they've got that emotion coursing through their veins, and because they're being driven or really pushed by at times irrationality, but yes, just pure raw emotion of this day and age. Before we get to number 4, I want to quickly go over a listing that is one of my favorites that just had a price reduction. Today, I want to give a quick pitch for a prime location, commercial, long-term rental opportunity that is right at the crossroads to Tamarindo. This is a location that will forever be in the middle of an expanding area. It now has a beautiful traffic light right in front of, or at the intersection, to be precise. Before, this intersection could be a little complicated, but now they've got everything going. Today I want to talk about Cabinas El Corazón de Tamarindo, now asking $825,000. This is one of the properties that I think could be leveraged to meet the extremely high demand for long-term rental properties. You have basically a half acre of property or just over it. When you come into Cabinas El Corazón de Tamarindo, you feel like you're in an absolute oasis because you've got this totally separate world there. And the property itself has a 3-bedroom home, a 2-bedroom home, and 4 studio apartments. Here's a look at the charming Caribbean-style 3-bedroom home. This is the pool that they have on the property, an exterior look at that 3-bedroom home, which is a really, just sort of classic, beautiful property. If you're not familiar, the Tamarindo and Villarreal area, this whole corridor has been exploding because, yes, it's an area with the famous Tamarindo Beach, incredible tourism hub that's traditionally drawn a huge number of tourists. We're only an hour away from the international airport. You've got every kind of restaurant in Tamarindo. And what's really needed in the area now are long-term rentals because, frankly, almost every property owner in this area decides to go for short-term rentals, given that during the high season, you could make a really decent income just renting weekends, doing tourism-based rentals. Well, these apartments, the homes themselves, all 6 of your different spaces on the property could be used as long-term rentals. And frankly, I think if you put an announcement on Facebook that you had any long-term rental availability right now this close to Tamarindo, you're going to see, first of all, that there are families of foreigners who are in the area and desperate to find that long-term rental, since really the inventory can be extremely expensive for what exists. And there frankly just isn't much inventory available. And you're also going to get a lot of interest from local professionals who need those long-term rentals and haven't been able to find them in town. That's the crux of the matter. To give you an idea of the location for Cabinas El Corazón de Tamarindo, we'll come right here so that you can see it's just a 5-minute drive right down to the beach in Tamarindo from this location here. And again, you are in the heart of everything. Quick drive out to the beach, easy to get in and out of Tamarindo. It's also just a 5-minute drive up to the area's most popular private schools, whether you're looking at La Paz, CREA, Journey, etc. It's got an incredible location. The property itself will only gain importance with time as everything develops out around it. And again, affordable long-term rentals are simply unavailable, or they tend to be too pricey for a lot of people. If you want to know more about Cabinas El Corazón de Tamarindo, now at only $825,000, be sure to send me an email to matt@costaricamat.com. That is my quick overview of my favorite listing this week. Let's go on and talk about reason number 4 that 2026 could be an absolute boom for real estate in Guanacaste. Yes, last week I had mentioned that in 26, the midterm elections will have some people waiting on the sidelines. However, and as a reminder, I do not have a political opinion personally, being a realtor. Obviously, the 2026 election could, number one, drive that emotion through the roof even further. The stress, conflict, people worried about what's going to happen. You're going to see a lot of people who decide that their concern about the election results on either side of any issue. That could drive them, given that this is not going to be a normal election. We haven't had the same kind of, even keeled, easygoing sort of ongoing situation in the US, to say the least. And if you see that there are really divisive conflicts that continue to escalate, obviously you could get people deciding to move abroad due to their concern about what is going to happen in that 2026 election. Fifth, and finally, I want to go over the fact that in the United States of America currently, there are a ton of sellers, people who own real estate, and again, I'm thinking of retirees, who have not been able to sell over the last couple years due to very high interest rates. Well, obviously, there's been a push to lower interest rates from certain political actors. And if the US economy does begin to deteriorate, if there are more signs and provable data that interest rate reductions are justified, then yes, you will see the Fed reducing interest rates further. You will see them accelerate those interest rates reductions as the economy shows those cracks. And finally, when you've got interest rates going down, you are going to see in the US market a lot of those retirees, one of our top cohorts, and also even people in their 40s and 50s who have been holding on to their US property for a long time. They're finally going to be able to sell that property in a lower interest rate environment. They're going to liquidate that equity that they have and finally be able to purchase here in Costa Rica. I know I have one neighbor who's absolutely been waiting for those interest rates to drop so that he can sell homes and cut ties up there. There are thousands of people like him out there, people who still have their home in the United States and for whom it's only a matter of time before they sell that property and invest that cash down here in the land of Pura Vida. Thanks very much for joining me, folks. I will be live. Actually, I'll have a recorded video next Friday, most likely, but I appreciate you joining in. Do be sure to subscribe, to like, to comment. Have a great weekend. Thank you very much, and Pura Vida.